ICT course about 4 or 5 years ago.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's not on? Let's start. Okay.
Hi, good evening. My name is Daryl Wasir. I'm now with BAIP, that stands for Second Basic Education Improvement Program. It's a program management unit for the Ministry of Education, and it's about improvement of the basic education system. And one of the aspects of that is ICT in education. So I'm, you could say, the project manager for that component, ICT in education, and it's my purpose to start ICT in education in a structural way for the ministry. And my previous job was with the Polytechnic College, and there I was the coordinator, the disciplines, electrical engineering and ICT. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ace. I come from Curacao, and I do everything with open source. And tomorrow I have a lecture at 2:15. I'm also involved in ICT in education in Curacao. For a couple of years I'm trying to make some progress, and this year the government announced that they will invest about $10 million to give a laptop to every child, or a device or a tablet. We will see if that really will happen, because it's still in the political arena, but I'm glad to be in Suriname.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you. What I will do is I will give you a few words of topics to discuss. Something like, let's say, social media. Everything is social media these days. So I want to have every one of you, if each one of you, to tell a little bit what way could we use social media in education. Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? I would, let's say, start with Dave, please.
Okay, social media, I think that is something, one thing we must not forget is that everything we use is in ICT, it's a tool for something else. It is something you want to establish, something you want to reach, a goal that you want to accomplish. So if you use social media in education, it must also be a tool for something else. It must make the way you try to perceive with certain things within your program, it must make it very easy, it must make it easier, it must help the students get in contact with each other, it must help students to interact with each other. And I think social media can certainly be a great tool for that, for interaction, for projects, and in that way they could, social media could certainly be used, yes.
Okay, Ace, any thoughts on that, your comments?
For the most part, I think I agree with Dave, of course, and I don't know too much about social media and education at the moment, because we are not in that stage really, but I think some kind of internal social media could also be useful, which is separated from the real internet.
Peter?
Yeah, does it work?
Yes, it's on.
Okay. I see social media, for instance, like Facebook, as an interesting news channel of your small group, and as such it can have a function, but further I don't know how to integrate it in training and in education as a tool. It can also be a handicap if you give a class lesson and you see that half of the students are communicating with each other, maybe about me, I don't know, without making it explicit. That could be a handicap as well, if it happens during the classroom session.
Let's say, for instance, that of course is the negative side of social media. But for instance, that, as you know, everybody is on almost everybody's on social media, even the parents. So could it be that, let's say, for instance, a teacher could use social media to a certain group? Let's say there's a group of parents in the class, of all the parents of a certain group or a certain class are in a group, and that teacher could use that medium to communicate with those parents. Let's, for instance, don't forget your child has homework or has an appointment or has to do a presentation. What's your thought on that?
Yes, well, I've always believed education is about community. So if I have a tool that allows me to involve collaboration, to create the networks that I need, and I can reach them where they are, that tool is important to education. So long as the objective is learning, and there are certain intrinsic attributes of the technology that will enhance learning. We need different learning outcomes. Collaboration is one outcome that we need to have people in 21st century understand how you collaborate with each other. If we can use the technology and reach them where they are, absolutely important to learning.
Okay. Daryl, any thoughts on that?
Yes, it's already said. It's a great tool for communication. You also said it yourself, because you could use Facebook, for instance, as a means to communicate, to make the students make assignments and present it on Facebook in the sense that their parents can watch it as well. So you can use it as a great communication tool.
Okay, Peter, I see you shaking head. No.
Yeah.
Could you please explain a little bit?
Well, for instance, I said it's a news channel, and I don't know how your experience is, but sometimes I have for days, I don't have time enough to read all the news of all these people who all do exciting things all day, and it's very difficult to trace it back. You need to know about a message to start searching. So the whole communication is not structured and not easy to recover. And I think the communication functions, like there exists in, for instance, a virtual learning environment, are much more tunable and intended for the communication with the children or communication with the parents or whatever.
Oh, okay. Ace?
Yeah, that's, I agree with that, I think, because I think first you asked for social media, and now you're talking about Facebook, and Facebook is a specific kind of social media and has specific problems.
Yeah.
And I think I said sometimes some internal thing could help, but you are already talking about some virtual learning environment which has some, and I think I agree partly with what Peter said.
Yeah, but social media is more than Facebook. It is more than the more. So I said social media.
Well, to me, the first thing is you meet them where they are. So they're already in the social media, so I know where they are, and therefore the needs that I have, I need to message, I need to create communities of learners and supporters of learners. If they're in the same place, I can reach them much easier. So it's for me to design an engagement strategy that allows me to use the tool to put forward what I want.
So actually, okay. So we could agree that social media is a tool, but you have to have good guidelines on how to implement it.
Absolutely. An engagement strategy is required to make the best of it. Remember, it's just a tool. But the most important reason for having this tool is that everybody that I want to talk to is there.
Yeah.
So I don't have to look for them.
Okay.
I know where they are.
Yes.
And so I can message them, I can bring networks together,
Yeah.
I can use attributes of that platform to advance my objectives, which is the learning objective.
Okay. So, but with every tool, you can use it good, you can use it bad.
Absolutely.
So, Peter?
Well, the children can easily move to another social media, and it takes some time before I notice that. The other point is you are not the owner and the school is not the owner. And if Facebook decides to go to the left or to go to the right,
That's all
you
right.
simply have to follow. You can not decide yourself how you are going to use it. It is just as it is now, but tomorrow it could be different, and maybe it's not a nice tool tomorrow.
So, but that would be the challenge, to use the tools you are given in that way that it's perfect for your situation.
Yeah.
But it can change tomorrow.
Yeah, if it changes, you also have to change. But that's the same thing with education. Education keeps changing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Concerning the social media, you have also options such as Facebook to create a kind of closed group where only certain people can be part of the communication within that group. And then you won't be able to put it out there, but you have possibilities to make things secure, to have could say focused on one group. So you do have certain possibilities with social media.
Okay, okay, that's clear. Something?
Yeah, I agree with that. You can use the closed group or stuff on
Yeah.
Facebook. What I see at the moment in our groups that just started spontaneously, for instance, for all the teachers of the K-12 schools, suddenly there's maybe 480 teachers in the group. Maybe there's only 2 or 3 people posting really, and there's still 1,200 people outside the group. So the effectiveness is also only limited.
Okay, okay. It's a little bit clear that you can go anyway, either way with the social media. Let's get to something else. Ace has a laptop here. If you look at it, it's definitely a laptop for a project. And that's something I want to discuss too, I want you to discuss, is one laptop a child. What's your thought on that, Daryl?
Yes, one laptop per child, it's I should say a good concept. The concept is to provide every child with such a device, and the child should be able to take it home and work in his home with it, and teach his parents or his brothers and sisters to also work with it. So that concept is good. It's a good concept. Whether or not it's working or not working, there are lots of reports, official reports that say it didn't work out because, for instance, I guess in Peru it was, that it didn't work out as well because they didn't really implement it good enough, because they gave the children this laptop, but the aspect of training the teachers to use it was lacking. So, yeah, I think it's a good concept, but we have to adapt and change the way we should use it.
Okay, thank you. Peter, your presentation, I think this would fit in your presentation.
It is a concept of 7 years ago. It was very sympathetic in those days. Many people from all over the world were contributing to make really a unique computer. It has mesh network technology, one of the first that had it. It was very interesting. So a sympathetic project, but the way it was rolled out all over the place in some countries, you couldn't buy it yourself, only via special ways. There were a lot of problems with it too, and Daryl pointed at them. There was one other sympathetic element in the project: give the children ownership of the laptop. That had as a result that they brought it home. And I used 2 of these laptops just for experimenting in rural Wanica to see what was happening. And it was amazing what happened in the families. When the mothers saw that their little child, 4 years old, could work with this laptop, within minutes, then that was a culture shock. They realized if my little girl can do this within minutes, then maybe someday I could master that myself. And that was a very positive learning effect, I think. But the problem is, I never see reports that have investigated what is happening at home with the other family members and with the neighbors if all these children, hundreds of thousands in Peru, bring these devices home. And maybe the effects there are much more positive than the effects in the classroom.
Carlton, you were a board member on e-learning in Jamaica. What's your thought on this?
Yes, well, e-learn in Jamaica was a separate project. It did not use a one laptop per child program as part of their research. e-learn in Jamaica's project came from technologies that were supported from our Universal Access Fund. This is you pay a small fee for incoming phone calls, and the government used that money to invest in infrastructure, education infrastructure. The one laptop per child, there was a project in Jamaica that sought to implement it in the schools. I have never been a big supporter. You've heard the reasons why. It is good, but it was not sufficient to give just the hardware. There were lots of, if the objective was learning outcomes, there were lots of other pieces that needed to be in place. There had to be a content strategy. What it is you put on it that would involve learning objectives. There had to be support for the hardware so that you had a support structure to do it. There was no, the implementation strategy and what happened inside the home, Peter was saying, was a big important part. Most of the implementations tend to suggest that learning only happened in the classroom and learning didn't happen outside of the classroom as well as in the home. So the implementation strategies that were used in a lot of places simply did not pay sufficient attention to what would happen in the home environment. And believe it or not, I agree with Peter there, that some of the most transformative things that came out of that was happening in the home, and that was not captured. Because if they had captured that as part, learning, as I say, is a community event. If they had captured that, then perhaps we would have had better outcomes from it. So, as I say, the technology, providing the technology was good, but if learning was the outcome, that was not sufficient.
So, providing the laptop is not enough, but you have to educate the people and support them in how to use it and how to implement it.
Yes.
Not only at school, but also
In the community and in the
community
home.
as a whole.
Yes.
Ace, your thoughts?
Okay, thank you. A learning tool, that is what children need. Maybe it's a pencil and a paper, because there's also countries where they don't have a pencil and a paper. But this laptop, or maybe some other form of laptop or device or tablet, that should be a learning tool. The goal should be learning, like you said. And I think there's a lot for us to learn in that. We are not ready to have some solution which is perfect for every country or every school or every kid. And I think this one laptop per child project, which was an education project, and they also made the laptop, and on the laptop there's a lot of educational programs. The whole idea of the laptop to give the children ownership, to bring it home, to make it very easy to share and to collaborate. Right out of the box, you open the laptop and you can already collaborate with each other.
Okay.
I think these were the good ideas from the one laptop per child project. And the government of Curaçao has now announced to invest in education, in the digitalization of the education in the next 4 years, about $10 million. But how that will be done exactly, what we can give the children, at least they will have one learning tool per child, one learning device per child. What it will be, we have to look at that. And only half of the budget is in the hardware. The hardware is actually, I think, the lowest priority, really, because the teaching of the trainers is important, the localization of the content. And also it's for us very important because we have Papiamento, which is our own language, and that makes it even harder to, more important to localize the applications and some of the content, to translate it into Papiamento. And this is some extra thing, which sometimes can be easily done with open source or with this laptop, because it's quite open. You don't have to ask some company to open some translation files. So there is some issues
Okay.
there.
And there was one part of the concept was the school server, and that never was
in school servers.
was really what it should be.
So just giving the hardware is not enough.
No.
That's clear.
Now, I think the things Colin mentioned is not is also going to be if for instance we use iPads instead of this Excel, because if you don't have in place that the teachers are trained to use it, that the right content is on it, and that the children are coached and taught everything. It doesn't matter what kind of device you have, but also it always will fail, because you have to.
Of course.
Yeah, you have
So
to.
it's actually what I said. Just giving the hardware away is not going to solve the problem.
No.
Okay, let's talk about something else. Internet at schools. Is that a must?
Yes.
Yes.
But what about, because going on the internet, it's very easy nowadays. You go on the internet, you have to make let's say, some paper. What about copyrights? How do you discuss that? I think it's something very important for you, Dave.
Yeah,
Any
that's
thoughts on
true. Surprising enough, I have now a case at school where a student used a report of somebody else in another country and copied a great part of that report into her own report and presented as something that she wrote. The good thing, of course, is that we have a number of tools, a number of software where you can always screen, you can scan such a project, such a report, and you can easily find out if it's plagiarism, and you have to deal with that. Of course, you have examination rules to deal with those kind of things, but it is indeed something that is challenging for a school because, of course, students have easier access to a lot of information. And it also will mean that I think this morning when the Vice President talked about certain things that need to be in place, one of those things should be some laws that will, of course, concerning copyrights, should be in place. And that is not now the case. We have an outdated copyright law, and it means you have really to need to update that. But it is a challenge.
Peter?
Yeah, I don't think I have much to add to what...
Well, copyright, yes. You have those schemes and platforms that allow you to pick up plagiarism and so on. But in the broader sense, I am unabashedly in favor of open educational resources. I am in favor of free and open source technologies for education, teaching and education, and I make no apologies for that. If you believe that you want to build a culture of innovation and you want to encourage innovation, especially in the teaching and learning process, it's important for you to embrace openness. To me, that is important. So with respect to copyrights, I also favor alternate methods for intellectual property registration, for example, Creative Commons. I believe those are much more important for us in this region. And it seems to me that if we're serious about policy in education and we're serious about fostering an environment for innovation, that those kinds of basic fundamental policy prescriptions should come into play in the teaching and education sector in our countries.
Ace?
Yeah, I can agree with most of that about especially the openness and about copyright. I don't know exactly what the question was because if you produce something, it's automatically copyrighted, right?
Yes.
If I write something, it's automatically copyrighted.
Yeah.
But what Dave said, and that was also part of the question, is the plagiarisms. People are using entire pieces from other person's work.
Yeah.
And of course, in the higher education, this is of course a big problem. And, but in the schools till 12 years, it's maybe not such a big problem. But I'm just thinking about all the IT people sitting here and who have to make some kind of report or offerte or quote. Most of the time, I'm just sitting, taking 20 things from 20 sources, you know, putting them all together and then remolding them a little bit in my own words. And that's actually a very good skill that you can learn.
Yes,
this way.
that's about innovation. To me, that's about innovation and synthesis. That is synthesis. One of the outcomes of education is synthesis, the ability to synthesize new information from pieces that exist in the environment. So that's why I'm saying if you think about open source content and open source technologies, that creates, that fosters that kind of outcome, synthesis.
Just a very small, remark on that. We need to study how the learning is improved when we use computers. First, we have no computers, and then we apply computers, and then we have to find out if the learning improved. But do they do better math or better language skills, higher marks, or is it these other skills like synthesis or doing research or other stuff that we at this moment don't measure and don't even see? Maybe it's to be more self-reliant.
So, but how would you achieve the open source? Because usually when somebody writes a paper, he wants to keep that information as personal as possible. Actually, it's mine. I don't want anybody to use it. So how will we get to that?
Here is the paradox. If I'm the only one who knows something, then I would not be contributing knowledge to anything and anywhere. So, and this is my argument, even the university, where they believe that I entered the university at a professorial rank, but at the university you have people who are researchers, and the way you advance in academia is by having your research work published in what I call refereed journals. And I always have this thing, I go to academic board and I say, what is more important? Is it more important for you to be published in a journal where only 10 people read it, or you publish it in an open repository where you have 100,000 eyes looking at it and maybe capture an idea that innovate on your idea outside? And so it's a balance, but it's also about valorizing, how you valorize knowledge. Because to me, if I'm the only one who knows something, it's not very valuable.
Okay.
It's more valuable if 100,000 people know what I know. I mean, my father said to me a long time ago, knowledge is like foul manure, you know. Chickens, it's only as good when you spread it.
Yes.
And to me, that is the paradox in academia. Is it more important for 100,000 people to know what I know, or do I make it more valuable if only me and 10 of my colleagues know it? That's the question you need to answer.
Daryl.
Yeah, so actually I agree, because if you want to collaborate, you have to share. So why the hell will you keep it to yourself? So if collaboration starts with sharing, so to improve things, so I totally agree with you.
So, but coming back to what Dave explained, what happened with him is that using it it's okay, but at least mention it.
Attribution.
Precisely.
Use with attribution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I use it, but I give Dave
Yeah, give
full
credit to the
credit
person
for
that-
I got this from Dave.
Yeah.
And I'm making this small incremental change to that idea.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm moving it forward, and I give it to you, and you can make another incremental change on top of it.
But don't present it as it's yours.
Yes, somebody was speaking this morning about innovation and about incremental and disruptive innovation. And I thought it was very important to make that distinction between what is incremental, because oftentimes it's there's that very small incremental innovation that is the big hit for the masses.
Okay.
And we should never lose sight of every opportunity we have to create one little piece more on top of each piece we get. Because that's the way you valorize, and that's the way you decide. In a knowledge business, it's the small, discrete innovation that is most valuable when you spread it wide.
That's it.
Just wanted to add something to all of this is what I've also noticed is the students coming into my school, a tertiary education, are coming from secondary level. And if you look at our education system right now, primary education and secondary, it's mostly focused on broadening knowledge. It's not focused on skills and attitudes. And that is what is lacking mostly at primary, secondary level. It is a good thing to broaden the knowledge, but if you have the ICT developments, internet, the knowledge is out there. But it's really the skill and the attitude that comes in play. How to go about with this information? How can I use it? Such as he's just said, how can I make it, make some changes? How can I present it? What can I do with it to make it my own and present something that is similar? I will give the credit to him, but I can also say something in my own words. Those skills and that attitude is something that I really miss when students come into my school, and I think that is mostly something that we have to focus on also if it comes to education improvement and changes in the future.
Okay, gentlemen, I've just got a signal that we only have 5 minutes. I want to ask Daryl on any last thoughts before we go to some questions, if there are questions from the audience.
On what particular subject?
No, just your last words.
Yeah,
Not
give me a
nothing.
subject.
Nothing.
I agree with him about sharing and yeah, you should teach people to use those I think it's called APA rules.
Yes. Yeah.
You should teach the students that.
precisely.
If they already know, then they will use that, and they will. You won't have plagiarism and that sort of kind of thing. If everybody knows those rules and they use it, it will be fine.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the audience? It doesn't have to be concerning the subjects we just discussed, but anything you want to add, because these guys are experts, and I believe and I know they know what they're talking about. Excuse me.
Albert Daniels, the Caribbean manager for ICANN. You've all agreed that the internet is very important in education and educational development. My question is from a global standpoint, and we've heard that there needs to be strategies, there need to be implementation strategies, there need to be policies and so on. Within ICANN, there's a multi-stakeholder model that gives the academic community an opportunity to set policies, global policies, with regard to how the internet is governed. Would you say that from a Suriname perspective and perhaps from a wider Caribbean, Curacao perspective and other territories, that the academic community is participating as much as it should in that global debate on what internet governance should look like?
Peter?
I never have noticed that, sorry, but the academic community is very small here. Eh? The whole population is small, and the percentage of people who you could count as academic community is very small as well. It's also a problem. As a small country, you cannot participate in all the superstructures in the Caribbean or the worldwide area, you have to do that, I think, via CARICOM or other bodies. Otherwise, you simply don't have the people to populate all the interesting circles.
I would say no, we don't have enough, but a couple of reasons why. First of all, we have to build capacity to talk about the issues that we are. There are several research initiatives in academia to deal with ICTs, and they're mostly centered around use and access and inclusion. With respect to governance at the global level, there certainly have not been enough interaction at that level. And what is required to make that happen is a lot more capacity building to enable them to see how those issues that they're now interested in, ICT as development tool, where they're talking about inclusion and access and pricing and so on, how the governance perspective actually impact those outcomes.
Okay. Any questions? Any more questions? No? Then I would like to thank my panel. There's a lot to talk about in ICT and education. We only had 45 minutes minus the technical problems. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay? Let me try that again. Guten Morgen. All right. I try and learn that in as many different countries as I can, how to say hello and good morning. So thank you for your time and for joining me today. And what I'm here to talk to you about is a fantastic new business that has been growing in leaps and bounds in recent years. And the unfortunate part of that business for you and I is that the profits in that business come at our expense. So that business is cybercrime. So as data and mobile devices and all these trends that the earlier speaker was talking about, as these begin to proliferate and expand, these are all vulnerability points for hackers to now target us and try and steal our bank credentials, our passwords for our job, and to take advantage of these and to break into systems valuable and steal valuable information from back-end systems. So just a quick little disclaimer here. Some of the things I might get into are future strategy, IBM oriented, and we have the right to change those strategies at any time. A little bit more about me first before I get into that. So my role in IBM is to essentially be in a classroom every day. So whether it's an IBM classroom where I'm learning all the latest and greatest in terms of reports, new information with regards to cybersecurity, but the bigger classroom that I'm in every day is my customers' meeting rooms and hearing about my customers and how they face different challenges. So those classrooms for me are in 23 countries as well as the country of Canada. And I talk to all different types of organizations from some of the largest banks and governments in the world to also some of the smallest banks and governments and even small companies and the different challenges they face. And given that I come from a consulting background before my days of IBM, I try and work with my customers and consult with them while they're trying to solve different business problems from an IT perspective. Okay? So when we think about cybercrime, really, it's important to understand it from a sophistication and motivation perspective. So when we think about the least sophisticated and least motivated types of attacks, these are those, think of those emails, the Nigerian money transfer emails. Has anybody received those? Where all you have to do is connect with this prince who's in Nigeria, and he's going to send you $400,000 US to your bank account. Surprise, when you send your banking information, it's them who's taking your money, not the other way around. But this is old news, right? And we're not falling for that anymore. So things are getting more and more sophisticated. So now what we're seeing here is organized crime. So when you think about organized crime, the old picture of organized crime are these guys with the muscle, right? The hired goons that could come into your small business and say, okay, well, if you want to operate in this city, you have to pay us whatever, right? And their growth is phenomenal in what they've done in terms of going into cybercrime. What they'll do now, these mafioso, they will actually hijack systems for companies, and they will require you to pay some type of blackmail in order to return the control over those systems. And I'm going to give you some regional specific examples throughout my presentation. So this is fact. This is what's happened in some countries companies in this region. More than that, there's an actual black market where your information, consumer information, is being traded. So something, a very basic record that's stolen from a database that includes something like name and address is not very valuable. But once you start adding more valuable information, such as in Canada we have our social insurance number, whether it's your driver's license number, information that can be used to obtain credit and things like that is much more valuable. And then there's also all of our credit card numbers and things like that as well. So think about the Target breach. That was basically done by organized crime. All right, so, and 500,000 records were stolen as a part of that. And you know what, it's unfortunate that they didn't find out until many months later that this is what happened when consumers' cards were being used for other transactions. But organized crime, it's becoming very, very sophisticated. Some other things that I've seen in the region, and I was talking about this in a business meeting here yesterday, is that they're making investments, and they will invest in something that has a very high return on investment. So for example, let's think about a USB key, right? So in two separate instances in different countries, they have these mafias have set up a fake company, and they start a booth, like a marketing booth, and they're distributing free USB keys to people everywhere, right? And the USB key, it looks like it's blank, but it actually has spyware and malware in the USB key. So as soon as they plug it into their system, the malware makes its way onto the computer, and then now they're recording your passwords. They can even record screenshots and things like that, and then that is sending that information back out to these organized criminals, and they are now leveraging that to try and expand their foothold in your enterprise. So this is what's happening. It's a big problem, and some countries not too far from here they have a very hard problem erasing it, because nobody really is throwing away these USB keys. When we look at hacktivists, these are extremely sophisticated groups, and they're not motivated by money. So when you think about Anonymous, all you have to do is really create a bad policy. Let's say it's a bad labor policy, or something else that really is against their philosophy, and it could be anything. And these groups will then target your company for whether it's a denial of service attack or some type of other breach of your enterprise. And because they're widespread, these hacktivists, they share information in all these dark corners of the internet. They trade tools and systems, compromised systems, access to compromised systems, and they're really working together in a very sophisticated global way, and that's how they take down systems. So, for example, spyware that might end up on these USB sticks can actually also be leveraged for a denial of service attack. So a normal PC such as that one can be a part of this attack. It's basically called a zombie PC, and it will just start sending traffic to this website. Let's say it's a banking website, and then that's a denial of service attack. These are essentially some of the big things that they're doing, but they have a long list of targets, and they're not shy about listing their targets publicly. And then lastly, in terms of the most motivated and the most sophisticated attacks, are basically governments, foreign governments, that for one reason or another, they want to see what's going on behind your curtains. So because they have the best technology and very, very big budgets, they can spend money on all the best people and the best resources to go and look inside pretty much, I would say, most devices and companies' networks. They can just open that door right up and see what's going on. This is a very interesting turn of events, because think about all those government RFPs. Think about all of the design files and that are hidden in back-end systems. These countries are sometimes going and looking at all these pieces of information and using them, sharing them with countries in their own company. So I'll give you an example. There was one of the world's, let's say, leading handheld metal detector manufacturers. I can't say their name. I can let you do your own research on that. Their design files were stolen, and this is a very expensive device because it was the premium brand for this device. And that design file was, the duplicate design started showing up in China a few years later, and just because of that one file, their designs that were stolen, that there's like essentially a Chinese product that is showing up that is about half the price of this company's product, and they've lost a significant amount of revenue because of that. So just moving along here. So there is definitely a new security reality, and there are so many numbers that we can just put up there. But essentially, when an enterprise is breached, the average cost is about $3.5 million. And when we think about the ways that companies are addressing the security problem, we see that they don't have a unified approach. They are essentially using a tool from this company, a tool from that company, and a tool from another company, and then they're putting all those tools together and trying to make sense of it. So it's a very scattered approach, and they end up running around in circles in a very reactive way. And the list goes on and on and on. Something else that's also very interesting is the growth in mobile malware. So how many people here are using Android devices? Okay, that's pretty big. And how about iOS, Apple devices, BlackBerry? Okay, so something that is very important for me to share with you is that, especially for Android, is that there are a lot of these patches that are released for the operating systems are security oriented. So if you're not on the latest and greatest patches, then your device might be vulnerable for these types of attacks. So the last 2 releases of Android operating system were specifically geared towards addressing security vulnerabilities. So unless you can say with confidence that you have the latest iOS from let's say, for example, Android, your device can be leveraged and used against you. Your camera can be recording you, things like that, right? So it's important to keep these systems updated, but what the enterprise is having trouble doing is actually controlling that and finding a way to let's say, control this bring your own device trend. Okay. So what does this mean for us as employees of companies? This means that security is becoming a boardroom discussion. So in the case of Target, when they were attacked, what do you think that the boardroom discussion sounded like after it was publicized that they were breached? Certainly the chief marketing officer had a stake in that because their brand has been affected. And many people have lost their jobs. So for example, the CEO of the company essentially was fired because of all of this. They're saying it wasn't only because of that, but I would argue otherwise. The marketing officer, all the brand, because for example, when they moved into Canada, they really spent a lot of money on all these big stores, but now are customers going to trust Target as much when they go there and to spend their money? Are they going to feel comfortable paying with their credit card? So, and then let's look at the financial officer. What happens now? We have all these big costs. How are we going to we never budgeted for this, so how are we going to navigate this problem? So, and then of course, there's the human resources part of it. What happens when I have malicious or even accidental employees that are doing this type of activity? How am I enforcing policies there? And then on the other side of the coin, how are you tightening your usage of Facebook and things like that? And how are you controlling employee privacy? So it is very much a boardroom discussion, security strategy. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you all the different security breaches as they've been publicized, and this is essentially within a research report that IBM produces every 3 months. So when we look at 2011, this is that startup business that I was talking to you about. This is when they were just launching their business, and they were getting their feet wet and trying to understand how to really make some profits. So what we can see here is the different color bubbles indicate the type of attack, like think about it in terms of the type of technology that was used in the attack, and then the size of the bubble indicates the financial impact on the company. So when I say financial impact, you can think about that in terms of fines. So for example, Target, their fines are estimated to be around $1 billion, Another financial aspect is the remediation. So now we realize that they broke in using technology X. Let's say they broke in through a mobile device. So what are we going to do now to fix that gap in our enterprise? And then, of course, the forensics. How do you even know what happened? That's very expensive to fly in those geniuses with the gray hair and ponytails and all the expensive equipment to come and diagnose problems. And then, of course, the long-lasting brand value that's lost, and any other financial impact, revenue, lost revenue for the company as well. So that's all reflected in the size of the bubbles. So just to give you some ideas here, I'm not allowed to name all the companies, but this is Sony. So that's a Sony breach in 2011, and that was by hackers gaining leverage through their PlayStation 4 platform and getting into the back-end billing systems to stealing customer credit information and using that. So that's a pretty big breach, as you can see there, and it's said that their stock is still recovering from that breach. And there's no shortage of the types of attacks, as you can see here, whether it's the Trojan software and denial of service attack in the orange bubbles. But what's very interesting is that it was an SQL injection, and just for those of us who aren't familiar with that term, what an SQL injection is that any place, like for example on your website or on your internally facing employee applications like billing systems, CRM systems, things like that, anywhere where there's a field where you can put in information, like for example first name, last name, things like that, what they're doing is they're actually putting a little bit of code there, right? It's a command which is being sent to the back end. So instead of putting a first name like Norman in my case, they put a database command, and surprisingly enough, that database command can often work. So now you're getting the database to respond to you just through this little field, and it's sending you more information, and you're gaining control over that back-end system. So that's how an SQL injection works. So as you can see here, it looked like they were just figuring out their business. This is what 2012 looked like. So they clearly are expanding their enterprise. They are moving into new types of products and services, and they're getting more and more sophisticated, and they're growing their efforts on a global scale. So what we can see here is SQL injection. These are a lot of them happened here in 2012. By the way, this is over 12 years old, this attack method. The first SQL injections happened in around 2000, so there's no good excuse for a company to become a victim of an SQL injection type attack, because the technologies